Today, we have a bonus episode of the Real Talk with Tian podcast, where we're talking to Jessica Clement. We get into her journey from academia to knitwear design and why Pattern Grading Made Easy, the course, has been so valuable in getting her to the next level in her design journey. Stay tuned. Real Talk starts now. Hey there. Welcome to another episode of the Real Talk with Tian podcast. This is a podcast dishing all the dirt on the realities of running a creative business. My name is Tian, and I'm a designer, technical editor, and business coach. See, since leaving corporate almost a decade ago, I've been doing this amazing work full time. It hasn't always been easy, but it has always been totally worth it. Over the years, I've had the amazing opportunities to work with hundreds of makers just like you and tons of big brands. This has given me a front row seat to what it takes to be successful as a creative business. With this podcast, I'm drawing back the curtains to share with you the behind the scenes of the realities of what it's really like, what it takes to run a successful and fulfilling creative business. Welcome to the conversation. Grab a cup of tea or your favorite beverage. It's time for some real talk. Hello and welcome to the podcast, Jessica. I'm so thrilled you're here to share your design journey and the role Pattern Grading Made Easy has played. Because we have knitters and crocheters listening in who wants to start designing or have been designing for a while and now wants to learn how to grade patterns. And your journey might be just that thing they need to hear right now to take that next step.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's start with your pronouns.
She, and her are fine with me.
Okay. And tell us who you are and what you do.
So my name is Jessica Clement, and I am currently staying home looking after my toddler, but my journey has taken me from growing up in Pennsylvania to moving to Los Angeles to moving to France, and now I live in the UK, and I am completely changing careers. So I initially, when I graduated from high school, I moved from Pennsylvania to Los Angeles to do a year of fashion design school. So I initially was like, I want to be a designer. I want to design clothes, and this is sewing. So I enrolled in the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in Los Angeles. And after a year, I thought, you know what, this is not a good fit for me. I'm only learning really how to do like textile manufacturing. This is not the right fit. So I dropped out and I transferred to UCLA. And I did an English degree there. And I loved academia. And I thought, oh my goodness, I want to be an academic. I want to, go do a PhD. I completely committed. And between my undergrad and my master's, I worked in rural France. I was an English teacher, and this is working for the French embassy in the United States. It was a contract position. And then I moved to the UK. And I did a master's degree and a PhD in English at the University of York, and it's up in Yorkshire, kind of northern England. And I didn't know this at the time, but I was also going to meet my husband. So 1 month after I moved to the UK, I met my husband, and really the story of my designs began during my PhD, because I didn't have any hobbies. I didn't really have anything creative to do, and I was working all the time and getting really, really burnt out. And my husband said to me, you really should take up a hobby. And I thought, I will do knitting because it's portable, it's creative, I can do it in front of the TV, and I can make something I can wear. And it just snowballed from there. And so I finished my PhD, and I also had a daughter within the same year, which was crazy. And then after she was born, I just kept knitting and knitting and knitting and knitting. And I decided that academia wasn't actually the place I belonged. And this is kind of my newer journey that I'm starting, is thinking through design and thinking through my place in a creative field and where I want to be. So you're catching me really at the beginning of momentum, I feel like. And that's kind of where Pattern Grading Made Easy came in.
So tell me about your timeline. I mean, you were studying your PhD. When was that? And when did you pick up the hobby?
I graduated from my PhD in 2018. So I really started knitting, actually learning how to do it in 2016, 2017. So I taught myself from YouTube videos and, going to like Michael's or the UK equivalent, which is Hobbycraft, and just getting acrylic yarn and
Yeah.
these big chunky needles and fumbling around and dropping them and being so like committed to actually learning how to do it that I just kind of kept with it and kept going.
Yeah. Wow. So you're pretty new at this. So
I'm a quick study though. I think when I'm the kind of person that
yeah,
like when
no
I get an
kidding.
idea in my head, I just kind of go for it until I have it done.
So since you've been designing, what are the kind of things that you like to design? What are, what projects are you most passionate about designing?
I love stranded color work. I am drawn to designs that have a lot of kind of mosaic style color work and that are more intricate because I think that kind of feeds this visual pleasing part of my brain. And I love to work charts. I'm kind of weird that way. I really like a good complicated chart. I also am currently looking at designing garments that are influenced by Pennsylvania German and also Welsh traditional motifs.
Okay.
From my father's side, my grandfather was like a Pennsylvania German farmer. He didn't speak English, and there's a ton of like historical design there. And my husband is Welsh, and there's a whole lot of traditional design motifs there. And so I'm kind of working my way through combining them and thinking through like how to represent those sides of my family. And it's been a really interesting journey. And I'm also kind of putting my research hat on to look through these like old designs. So it's kind of combining a lot of my interests all at once.
And that's what I love about design. It's like you don't have to just do one thing a simple stock in it. You can pull in so many of your experiences, so much from your career and bring it all into this thing that we're just kind of morphing into.
Yeah, so like the current design that I am working on is inspired by a traditional Welsh blanket design. And there's some motifs that were in weaving, and I've kind of taken that and I've given it a 21st century spin. And so hopefully I will have something to release sometime soon.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait to see it and see how these different cultures really influence the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and also thinking through like what is available and how can I make something different.
Yeah.
So the design itself is it's not like a colorwork yoke on the shoulders. The colorwork comes into the body and the sleeves. So the yoke is simple, but the rest of it is really intricate and detailed. So it's kind of like a flip on what you think of traditional colorwork where it should be, which I
Ooh.
kind of think is interesting.
Okay, so I'm intrigued. I can't wait to see it.
Me neither. I'm working on making up the sample, so I'm kind of it's evolving as I work on it.
And that's the beauty of being a designer. You have one thing in your mind, and as you're working through it, it's probably just going to morph into something completely different, but equally or more beautiful than you could have even imagined.
That's the beauty of knitwear is that it's this evolving form, and even if you
Mhm.
have a pattern that you're making off of, um, you still have a little bit of creative interpretation that you can really make your garment your own. So there have been times I've been making a jumper or a sweater or a cardigan, and I thought, you know what, I don't really like the way the sleeve is fitting me. I don't like the way this stitch pattern is working up. I want to change it. And so it's a really malleable art form,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's something I really appreciate. And it makes it fun.
Yeah,
It's a knit your own adventure.
exactly. Even when you're working from an existing pattern, it's just blending in who you are and what you enjoy into this art form.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of never thought that this would be my art form. You think of when you think of art and you think of creativity, you always think of something that's painted or drawn or sculpted, but knitting is something so old, so ancient, but so necessary.
And
So
I think it's more because it's a craft and it's done by women and it's not on the same plane as some of those other art forms that you just mentioned.
yeah,
It seems so simple. It's just sticks and string, right? Where sculpting, it's like you have the clay, you have to mold it, and you have to do all this thing, but it's the same thing with knitting. You still have to mold this yarn into a thing that could be three-dimensional.
it's engineering. It really,
Yes.
it has completely changed the way that I think about craft and art and creativity. It's so much more than just, I'm going to see what I see and make what I make.
Yeah.
It engages all of you. And I love that about the fiber arts in general.
Yeah. So I love talking to you about your journey because I think it's so interesting because we all get here at, from different points. I came here from finance, you came here from the academic world. So, and how we've met is through knitting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what made you decide to join Pattern Graded Made Easy course? What were you struggling with that made you said yes, you raise your hand to this investment in yourself?
Well, I knew I wanted to design, but I didn't know how to get started. And I think when you making the jump from knitting as a hobby to making the patterns yourself is a really big jump. I know you can knit as much as you want, and you can read all the charts, but to know what goes behind the scenes of making that nice pattern, making those charts, there is some education that is necessary. And actually, I was a very lucky scholarship recipient from Pattern Grading Made Easy, and I am really thankful because it has given me a lot of knowledge I didn't have. And I think when you're in the knitting community, learning about size inclusivity, you can't be a part of it now without really coming across that and thinking through that critically. And I always knew that if I was going to design knitting patterns, I wanted anyone to be able to wear them. It doesn't matter if you're big or small, anywhere in between, or even if you're a child or a baby. I wanted to be able to make my designs flexible. And so Pattern Grading Made Easy really gave me the tools to say, here you are, you deserve something. This is for you too. So that's a huge thing for me because I kind of fall in between plus size and straight sizing
Mm-hmm.
myself. So there's some knitting patterns I couldn't make because I felt like I couldn't wear the ease and I didn't look like the models that were, modeling it. So it was a little bit selfish. So I want to be able to wear this. I want to do it, but also I don't want anyone to ever feel like that.
Yeah, and I hear you because when I started knitting back in the early 2000s, I was looking at all the popular magazines and none of the sizes could fit. And
Yeah.
like you, I'm not quite plus and I'm not quite straight size. It's like a 10, 12 size. So when I saw those models and the bust size went up to like a 48, it's like, okay, well, I would have to do a complete redesign to be able to fit it or, just to get the necessary ease that
Yeah.
I want.
Well,
And
also
now
I
we're
didn't.
seeing patterns that go way up to 50 and 60s inch bust.
Yeah. And also, I didn't have the skills to be able to even change it to what I needed to do. It was like, well, this doesn't fit me. I have no idea to even figure out how it would be possible to make something that would fit me. So I'm just not even going to go there.
Exactly.
So, but I learned a lot through Pattern Grading Made Easy, and I really appreciated how, I mean, it does what it says on the tin, Pattern Grading Made Easy. In 4 weeks, I know how to pattern grade. I also know how to use Excel to do it.
And I think that was a major part of why I wanted to do the course, to make it easy and make it accessible. Because I think a lot of people think that when you're starting to grade a pattern, it's like this whole big thing. And I mean, it is major,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be a whole thing.
I think what I found trickier was the designing aspects rather than the grading. Because once you have the data, once you have the swatch and you have the numbers, you can grade. Like that for me was like, oh wow, okay, now I know how to grade. Once I have the numbers, I got it. It's the getting the different measurements and the ease and the neckline that I found myself a bit challenged by. And I'm still kind of working through. But
And that's
yeah,
part of the whole designing process.
yeah, yeah.
And then it's also testing out what you like best for that particular design. Because you might find a neckline that works great for like a particular sweater style, but then the next style, you need to change it up. So it's
Yes.
all part of the whole designing process. And I think that it comes with practice.
It does. It definitely comes to practice, and I think that the more widely you knit, the more type of patterns you knit, and the more difficulty of items that you try to make, the better of a designer you'll be. Like when I was doing my PhD, my supervisor, she told me the more you read and the more critically you read, the better a writer you're going to be. Well, the same thing is true for knitting patterns. The more you knit, the more different types of things you knit, the better of a design you're going to be, because you're going to see what works, what doesn't, what other people are doing. And also, like, when you look at the patterns themselves, like, how are they written? How are they communicating this information that you are able to understand? So, like, really paying attention to different things. So I can't look at a knitting pattern anymore with like looking at everything.
Right. And when I teach how to start designing, I have a book on it, and I have a course on writing pattern. And that's the thing I tell new designers: go out and just look at everything you can find, read different magazine styles, look at different designers you like, not only just to figure out your style, because you're not copying from those other people, you're just pulling in elements that you like for yourself, but you're also trying to figure out what's the best way to translate the ideas you have in your head to your audience.
Oh, definitely.
Because the way you write is completely different from the way I write. And it's all fine. It's not a wrong or a right, but it's trying to figure out your own style and figuring out how to best get your ideas across.
Yeah, and how to clearly communicate what you're thinking to other people. And I think it's really important to kind of be able to communicate your vision in a way that people can really respond to it, and can, in a case of a knitting pattern, can replicate your vision. Because you're not giving them the finished garment, you're giving them the blueprint to make their own.
Exactly.
So, and I actually did pick something up when I was in my design courses about, apparel manufacturing, is when you make a blueprint or like a pattern for a pattern cutter to cut out and to make these garments in a scaled up way, you have to be very clear.
Exactly.
And you have to be very precise, because it really, really matters.
Exactly. So going back to the course a little bit, Pattern Graded Made Easy, what was one of your main concerns that would have prevented you from joining, and what put your fears at rest?
I really didn't have a lot of fears, but it was more misgivings, I guess I would say. I was a bit apprehensive if I was ready.
Why is that?
It was more of a case of, am I really ready to take this step? Is this something that it's more of a question of my self-confidence than anything else. Like, am I really willing to commit to this? Because it is it's a serious commitment, and I really committed to doing the homework and looking through all the lessons and listening to what the materials it provided. So, it is a time commitment. It is a commitment of self-discipline to think through, and also it felt like it was kind of a little bit of a rocket launcher on my career and my design process, because it took me from having these random ideas to like, okay, we're going to put numbers to them now, and we're going to take this concept you have and we're going to make a pattern. So it kind of pushes you a lot out of your comfort zone in a good way, in a very good way.
Good. And I love to kick butt and tell you, just go do it. But obviously we didn't have this conversation before you joined, but what was the catalyst that said, okay, I am ready, even despite all the misgivings that you were having at the time?
Honestly, Tian, what made me say I'm ready is when you told me that I had won a scholarship spot. And I was like, well, this is fate. Like, this is Kismet saying, this is for you. This is your path. If you don't jump in, you're not going to jump ever. So really, that was the catalyst, was like signing up, sometimes you just have to do hard things and dive in, sometimes when you're not as ready as you feel like you should be. And I think that you get this headspace of like, I'll do this when I'm ready, I'll do this when XYZ happens, or I am in a different career, or my child is in a different phase of their life, or I have this money or that money. You can excuse big
and it's
decisions.
easy to make those excuses,
but it's always
because it's easy.
Yeah, it's always easy.
Yeah, it's like, I'll wait till my kid graduates college and has his own house. And I started when my son was was like 2 years old. I started learning to knit, and now he's going to be 16. And if I had waited until he was in college, I'm thinking back to all that I would have missed out on, all the opportunities and all the different support I've given to designers like yourself over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so easy to think you're not ready. And
Yeah.
when you get given a gift like this and you get given an opportunity, sometimes it's just irresistible to just go with it and jump in and say I'm committed to growing. And sometimes growing is difficult, and sometimes you really get out of your comfort zone. Because I don't know anything about Excel. I didn't know anything about pattern grading. I'm not a numbers person. Like, math terrifies me. Like, I hate it all. Algebra, not my friend. Geometry, not my friend. So the idea of like voluntarily signing up for a course where I would do math, like Excel, not my idea of
A
something
Saturday night, right?
yeah, but I actually did kind of enjoy it.
Yeah.
There's something very satisfying about getting it right.
And that's part of the reason I did include that as part of the course, because I know a lot of us, when we start out, we love using our pencil and paper and calculators. But as you start grading to be more size inclusive, which means you're making a lot of sizes, if you make one little error, it's gonna just screw up the whole calculation.
Yeah.
But with Excel, you can just make a little tweak here, make a little tweak there, and the whole thing just gets corrected, and it's accurate. You don't have to worry about human error.
It is a lot more user friendly than I had ever thought. Like, yeah, I think it's learning about how to use Excel as a tool. That's kind of half the course. It's really like, how do I use this to my advantage as a complete novice? And something I really learned that was kind of really eye-opening to me in pattern grading Made Easy was the importance of the swatch. Like, you always hear about, you should swatch before you start this. Swatching is really important. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And you kind of just do it and you like move on. But I think from a design perspective, I was like, oh, this is like the thing. I need to, like, the swatch is, you cannot skip this. So I was kind of like a light bulb moment. I was like, if you have a swatch, you have your numbers.
Yeah.
That is your data.
That is everything. And I think that's part of the important thing that I stress a lot throughout the course is, you need your swatch, you need your measurements from your swatch, and you need the spreadsheet and the schematic. The schematic is just like, it pulls it all together for you. So you can visually see all the things that's going to go on in your pattern. Like how far you want to start the neckline. Because if you're just kind of going off, all willy-nilly, when do you know to start your neckline, or when to start your armhole depth, or when to stop, working the armhole and start something else? So
yeah, definitely. It's the power of the swatch is what I call it. So anyone listening, swatching is important. Please do it. The designer,
please do it.
All the designers want you to swatch. They need you to do it.
So the course goes through 4 weeks of lessons. We start out with the resources. Did you know about those resources before we started with the course, or were those all brand new to you?
The Craft Yarn Council was new to me. I had seen Isolde's chart kind of on the interwebs here and there, but I really didn't understand it or how to use it. So I saw, like, because she has on her website a downloadable chart of all these different standard wide industry measurements for, I think it's women's bodies, and it's very size inclusive. But I had looked at it before and I thought, I don't really know what to do with this information. That's a lot of numbers, and I don't really know what to do with it. I know it's important, but the course actually taught me how to look at the numbers, why I need certain ones, what's it for. So it demystified the big, like, chart of, like, here are all the bust sizes, here are all the bicep sizes, here are all the waist sizes, that it can be a little overwhelming when you don't really know what you're looking at.
Yeah. So lesson 1 starts with the resources, and then lesson 2 goes into, designing a basic hat and cowl and using spreadsheet. And I show you 2 ways of using the spreadsheet. An easy way, if you're just brand spanking new and you're just like, I just need to plug in a couple numbers. And then I go into more detail with formulas and just ways to make it just so much easier and just more accurate for you.
Well, to put it into perspective for you, I was a complete Excel newbie when we started the course. By the end of week 2, I use the advanced method to calculate a hat size for a baby, a toddler, a child, a woman, and a man in DK weight and fingering weight.
I would throw confetti at you if I didn't want to make a mess here.
But like to be honest, like that's what I could do. Like I started from 0 and then I just went for it. So now that's just the power of Excel is learning how to use that tool, and the information you've given us is I kind of went from nothing to being able to grade, like, what size head do you have? Here's a hat.
And then we go into week 3 where we started talking about garments and putting that all together. And then week 4, we jump more into different constructions for garment. How did you find those 2 lessons?
3 and 4, I think, were way more challenging.
Yeah.
Because that's a big skills jump.
Yeah.
So I think week 1 and 2, I was like, I can handle this. This is amazing. I got to week 3 and I was like, hold on. It's a little more tricky, and I got to really pay attention. I took it really slow. I think getting the homework done, really thinking through my ideas in week 3 and week 4 was a bit trickier. The thing I really struggled the most with was like the design elements of getting the numbers. Just thinking through like how does my neckline fit? What's the shoulder proportion? Because like I think the Craft Yarn Council doesn't list like necks, and that was driving me crazy. Because someone who's on the larger spectrum of sizes and the smaller spectrum, that necessarily don't have like bigger necks. But thinking through like where a comfortable neckline will sit, and then getting that data was really frustrating for me. Because once I had the numbers, I could do the grading. It's until I get the numbers that I'm like, I don't know how to do the neckline.
And you bring up a great point, because just because you're bigger, that doesn't mean you have a bigger neckline. And I think that's the most important thing I wanted with this course, is to help designers really think through the whole process, think about the whole body and how pieces are going to fit and how they're going to just sit on a smaller body versus a larger body. Because not everything changes proportionally as you get bigger.
Yeah, and everyone's an individual, and you have to kind of make those, you don't want there's no concept of like a simple formula is going to grade for every body, and thinking through ways I can make that clear on my pattern. So, if to communicate to a reader that, if this doesn't work for you, I have included this modification you can add so that you can get a perfect fit, or you can add length here, or you can take away length here. You can add an extra stitch at your underarm for a better bicep fit. So kind of thinking through how I can modify my pattern to let the knitter know, hey, this is for you. I'm going to add this option for bust darts so that the front of your sweater isn't too high up on the waist, and it's hitting where it needs to be hitting. So I think I'm thinking through stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you don't think about that until you actually start designing and grading. And there's so much thought that goes into it. So much thought.
It's so much thought, but it's doable, I think. So when I see people complaining about, it's so hard to grade. Yeah, it is hard, but it is possible. And if that's the kind of pattern you want to put out there, is that the kind of brand you want that is size inclusive, then it is worth doing all that extra work and getting those extra knowledge.
Yeah, I don't think that pattern grading is hard. I think that it can be challenging to think through some of the issues of fit. And I think that individual pattern, people who produce patterns who don't really say that it's hard aren't actually really doing their job. Take this from someone who's just learned to pattern grade. I think it's not hard to grade, if that I can make that distinction.
Right. Yeah.
It requires a bit more of a challenge. It requires a bit more thinking, a little bit more, I think a little bit more pattern testing, really, and thinking through who your intended audience is going to be. Maybe having a poll, or having, getting some more data. But the grading itself is not the challenge.
So we see what it's like for you before you joined Pattern Grade and made it easy. Give us kind of like a quick snapshot of what it's like now after you've gone through the course. What is designing like for you now?
Well, I open up Excel a lot. It's honestly, I open up Excel, I open up the Yarn Craft Council schematics. I have made my own master spreadsheet of like sizes. So I have taken all this data from the course, and I have like the master grading sizes of like men, women, children, babies, because now I just can pull straight from that Excel spreadsheet onto another one. I feel like tech master a little bit. So there's a lot more numbers, a lot more data than there used to be. Before I had a bunch of stranded charts, maybe a couple of like flat lay drawings, but now I'm thinking through like, how much ease do I want to add to this? Well, how much, where do I want this to sit on the hips, and how long, what's the proportion of that to the bust? And, what kind of neckline do I want to design? And what is the ratio of expansion from the neckline to the underarms for a raglan shaping? So it's a lot more concrete thinking through things rather than, here's a nice chart, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, or how to add this to my knitting pattern. So there's a lot more elements of like design and thinking through like technical issues than just, this is a nice stitch pattern, isn't it?
Yeah. So what surprised you the most or made you happiest about joining Pattern Grade and Made Easy?
That I could actually learn how to pattern grade, and it wasn't as hard and as awful as I thought. Like, really, I mean, I've said it before, pattern grading made easy is exactly what that's it. That is the course. But it is not a design course. You're not teaching me how to be a designer. You're teaching me a skill in my design. I think that's really important to know when you're signing up for a course like this, is that you're not going to learn how to design things. You're going to learn how to turn your designs into inclusive, with an inclusive range of sizes for all people. So that is a really important thing, I think, to know when you're thinking of signing up. It's a great course. I would recommend it to everybody.
For someone on the fence about joining the course, Pattern Grade and Made Easy, would you recommend the course? And what would you say are 3 benefits you've experienced as a result of going through the program?
Oh, I definitely would recommend it. I think benefit number 1 is you learn how to grade inclusively and with purpose. You're not just kind of designing for your own body or for a body of a friend or someone that you are learning how to transform a design into something anyone can wear. And I think that's a really necessary skill if you actually want to be a knitwear designer and you want to actually sell patterns. Number 2, it gives you the confidence to say, this is me, I'm here, I'm doing it, and I'm gonna invest in myself. And number 3, it's great to learn from other people. And there was, we had a Facebook group in the class, and we're able to share our Excel documents and talk about our issues in designing. So it makes you feel like you're not by yourself. You're not like in your own little corner of the world saying, I have no idea what I'm doing, because there are other people who don't know what they're doing, and you can figure it out together.
Yeah, and there was quite a bit of conversations between the students in the Facebook. And I think that was useful in pushing each other and showing different things that you're doing. So one thing with this round that we just had, someone would show their spreadsheet and another person would chime in and it's like, oh, it's not as pretty as yours, but the results were the same, right? Because we all learn differently. Some of us need color coding and some of us are just like, it's plain, it's fine.
I fall into the pretty color coding kind of category. Boxes organized neatly, I think, is my Excel aesthetic. But it's absolutely, no, I really appreciated having feedback from other students and being able to chime in, and also having access to you as well is a really important part of Pattern Grading Made Easy, and having you to help us troubleshoot or answer questions. Also, I think it's great that you're not there to hold our hand. Like, I think there's a difference between answering a technical question and teaching someone who doesn't understand the concept and holding your hand. I mean, when I was doing my PhD, I taught a lot of undergrads, and you quickly learn the difference. When I was holding office hours, I'd have a student come to me and want me to hold their hand writing their essay, which is not going to happen. But then you'd have students who were really understanding, or they didn't understand like a certain concept, and really talking through some of their ideas, and you could see that they were on the right track. They just needed a little bit of a push. Right. So I think that's what I really appreciated about having access to you as the course leader, was that you were there to really answer the questions, but you're not, because if you are an independent pattern designer, no one's going to hold your hand.
Right.
No one is going to be like, Jessica, have you done your, have you graded your neckline yet? Like that is up to me, and that is my agency to do that.
Yeah, and that's my teaching style as a whole, is to show how to do something. So the concept, teaching a man to fish rather than giving them the fish. This has been an amazing conversation, Jessica. I am so thrilled to have been a tiny part of your journey. I know there are so much more ahead for you, and I just can't wait to see all that you do.
Oh, thank you.
But before I let you go, tell us about what's coming up next for you and where is a good place for listeners to find you. Feel free to include your website, your Ravelry, social media. We want to know all the things.
Great. Well, so you can find me on Instagram at Skein and the Stitch. And I also have a corresponding blog, so skeinandthestitch.com, where I share my knitting makes and my sewing and some more creative aspects. I try to post once a week, sometimes every other week, but find me on Instagram. That's really where you can get in touch with me the easiest. Right now what I'm working on is my first pattern. So I've called it the Calon, which is Welsh for heart and soul. And it's the pattern that I mentioned earlier. So I'm using a traditional Welsh blanket design to the body, and I'm going to be making up a sample soon and then looking for pattern testers. So if you would like to make something that I design, I will be putting out a call for test knitters in the coming months. So please help me.
Thank you so much for being a part of the bonus episode, and I can't wait to see what else you're doing.
Thank you so much, Tian. It's been a really incredible journey, and I feel like I'm on the cusp of something really exciting. Yeah. So I am so happy that Pattern Grading Made Easy has definitely leveled me up. I feel like ready to handle a big change.
Thank you, Jessica, for coming on and sharing your experience with Pattern Grading Made Easy. A big thank you to our special guest for coming on and sharing so candidly her experience with the Pattern Grading Made Easy course. If you're a designer and you want to take the next step, you're ready to level up your designing, join Pattern Grading Made Easy today. Go to tianconnaughton.com/Pattern Grading Made Easy to enroll today. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of the podcast all the way to the end. Everything we mentioned will be listed in the show notes at tianconnaughton.com/Real Talk with Tian. If you have questions on anything I've mentioned, or if you just want to book a coaching session, go to tianconnaughton.com/contact-us to get in touch. You got this.